Hello, Jeff Williams on board the International Space Station. I'd like to address a couple of your questions here. Here's a question from Miami, from Ernie. He writes, when, how, and why the ISS pivots its orbit when the space shuttle is visiting the ISS. In other words, why do the Columbus and the Japanese Kibo modules are on the leading edge of the space station as it orbits during normal operations versus being in the trailing edge with the Russian modules leading the station when the shuttle visits the station? Well, the shuttle docks to the space station at the very forward end of the space station. But because the forward end of the space station is more vulnerable to debris hits from micrometeorite and other debris that's up here in orbit that might possibly hit the station, after the docking takes place, after the space shuttle is docked to the space station, we actually rotate the space station shuttle stack around 180 degrees so that the space shuttle is at the back end and the Russian segment, or the back end of the space station, is actually leading in the velocity vector. So that's to add a little bit of protection for the space shuttle to protect its thermal control system for the return to Earth. Here are a couple of questions about the butterflies we had on board. As you know, we had eggs that were brought up that hatched into caterpillars. The caterpillars made their chrysalises, and after they spent their time in the chrysalis, they popped out and they were butterflies, and we had them on board for a while. The first question is, do you think it was a good idea to bring monarchs to space? And this comes from a 5th grader in Indianapolis. And of course, I think it was a good idea to bring monarchs to space. It's a good idea to bring lots of things to space, to study them, to understand why they work, how they work, to give us insight into the processes, in this case of life, and how gravity impacts it and whatnot, so that we can apply that to other things, whether it be astronauts going for a long duration flight out to another planet, or to the moon, to Mars, etc. Or perhaps there will be some indirect benefit from these kinds of studies for life on Earth, and there has been much of that in the past. So it's certainly a good idea to study things. Now, the monarchs were brought on board primarily as a school project to increase interest among students around the world on science and engineering and space technology and all of that, because that interest needs to be fostered, because the kids that are in school now are going to be the next generation of scientists and engineers and technicians, and that will be very important for the future of the people of all over the world. There's a related question that comes from the same place about the butterflies, asking if we were going to let the butterflies fly around the ISS. Well, we wanted to, we and the crew actually, but unfortunately we couldn't do that. They stayed in their incubator, in their controlled environment, and lived out their lifetime, their normal lifetime, and died, and they'll be returned to Earth. But we observed them through a video camera that was installed inside, and watched as they went through their life cycle. Unfortunately, they never did fly around the ISS. All right, we'll talk to you next time.